When I fell down the stairs, my daughter Jessica rushed to post before rushing to the hospital. Finally have the house to ourselves. No more walking on eggshells around drama. Her photo showed my husband's antique dining table loaded with takeout containers and wine bottles. So I made one call to my investment broker and discovered something they thought they'd hidden forever. Who's being dramatic now? If you're watching this, subscribe to Women's Voices and let me know where you're watching from. The fluorescent lights in the emergency room made everything look surreal as I lay there with a fractured wrist and possible concussion. The doctor said I was lucky. A 73-year-old woman falling down a full flight of stairs could have been much worse. But as I scrolled through my phone with my good hand, waiting for someone to pick me up, luck felt like a strange word for what I was experiencing. The notification came through while a nurse was adjusting my IV. Jessica had posted to Facebook. I clicked it, expecting maybe a concerned message asking friends to pray for me. Instead, I found a photo of my dining room. The table my late husband Robert had spent 6 months refinishing, now covered with Chinese food containers and empty wine bottles. Jessica and her husband Kyle, grinning at the camera. My 15-year-old grandson Ethan wasn't in the photo at all. The caption made my head hurt worse than the fall. Finally have the house to ourselves. No more walking on eggshells around drama. Ladies' night done right. #blessed. #finally free. #no more mood swings. 43 likes already. Kyle's mother had commented with 3 champagne emojis. My own cousin Linda had written, "You deserve this." I stared at the timestamp. Posted 27 minutes ago. The hospital had called Jessica 45 minutes ago. She'd been notified that her mother had fallen downstairs, possible head injury, and her response was to stage a celebration photo before heading to the hospital. If she was heading to the hospital at all, the nurse returned with discharge papers. "Your daughter should be here soon to take you home, right?" I looked at that post again. The wine glasses, the laughter, the relief in their faces. Actually, I heard myself say, "I'll arrange my own ride." As I sat in the hospital lobby waiting for my Uber, I did something I hadn't done in the 18 months since Robert died. I called my financial advisor, Richard Morrison, the same one Robert and I had worked with for 30 years. "Margaret," Richard answered immediately. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Where have you been? Your phone goes straight to voicemail and my letters keep getting returned." My stomach dropped. "What letters? I haven't received anything from you." There was a long pause. "Margaret, we need to meet. Tomorrow morning if possible. There are some transactions on your accounts that don't match any of the investment strategies we discussed. And someone's been calling, claiming to have power of attorney over your finances." The Uber driver helped me into the car. As we pulled away from the hospital, I looked at Jessica's post one more time. 47 likes now. Someone had commented asking if I was okay. Jessica had responded, "Oh, she's fine. Just being dramatic as usual. You know how she gets. You know how she gets." Like I was some kind of burden they'd been heroically managing, instead of their mother, who'd invited them to live in her house after Kyle lost his job 2 years ago. "Temporarily," they'd said, "just until we get back on our feet." Let me back up and tell you how I got here. How I went from being a financially secure widow with a beautiful lakeside home in Minnesota to a woman discovering she'd been systematically destroyed by her own daughter. It started right after Robert's funeral. My husband of 42 years had left me the house we'd built together, his life insurance, and a substantial investment portfolio. At 67, I was grieving but financially stable. The house felt enormous without him, especially in winter, when the frozen lake stretched out endlessly beyond our windows. Jessica had been so attentive those first few weeks. She and Kyle would drive up from Minneapolis every few days, bringing groceries, helping with paperwork, sitting with me while I cried. Ethan, their son, would ask me about Grandpa's stories, making me smile through the tears. I thought grief was bringing us closer together. "Mom, you can't stay in this big house alone," Jessica said one evening as we watched the sunset over the frozen lake. "It's not safe. What if something happens and no one's here?" Kyle nodded from his spot on Robert's favorite chair. Something that had annoyed me even then, though I'd pushed the feeling down. "The winters here are brutal, Margaret. What if you fall on the ice? What if the furnace goes out and you can't fix it?" I'd appreciated their concern. The house did feel overwhelming some days. The silence was suffocating. What if, Jessica continued carefully, we moved in here, just temporarily. Kyle's between contracts right now, and it would give us time to save up while keeping you safe. Ethan could help with yard work and snow shoveling. We'd all be together. It seemed perfect. I wouldn't downsize right away. I'd still have family around me. And honestly, the thought of selling the house Robert and I had built felt impossible at that moment. This way, I could keep it in the family while not being alone. Just temporarily, Kyle assured me. Maybe a year, tops, just until I land the next big project. I should have asked what happened to their previous house. I should have wondered why they needed to save money when Kyle supposedly had a good job as an IT consultant. But grief makes you stupid. Grief makes you grateful for any hand reaching out, even when that hand is reaching for your wallet. Within 3 months, they'd moved in completely. They took the master bedroom, said it was bigger, and they needed the space. I moved into the guest room that had been Robert's office. They painted over wallpaper Robert and I had chosen. They donated furniture to make room for their stuff. Every change felt like a small death, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family was what mattered. But here's what I didn't know then. The real reason they'd moved in so quickly. Kyle hadn't been between contracts. He'd been fired from his last 3 jobs for falsifying expense reports. Jessica's credit cards were maxed out from their lifestyle, trying to keep up with her wealthy friends in Minneapolis. They'd already lost their apartment and been staying with Kyle's parents, who'd kicked them out after 6 months of excuses. They hadn't come to help me. They'd come because they had nowhere else to go. And my grief-stricken, trusting self was the perfect mark. The changes started small. Mom, why don't you let me handle your mail? You've got so much going on, and some of these bills are confusing. Mom, let's consolidate your accounts. It'll be easier to manage. Mom, have you thought about putting the house in a trust? For tax purposes. Every suggestion sounded helpful. Every suggestion moved my financial life further from my control and into theirs. But the worst part wasn't losing track of my money. It was becoming invisible in my own home. Family dinners, where they talked around me like I wasn't there. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Finding my belongings moved to the basement or thrown out entirely. Sorry, Mom. We thought you didn't want that anymore. And Ethan, my grandson who I'd been so close to, who used to tell me everything, became distant, spending all his time in his room, making excuses when I asked if he wanted to go fishing like we used to with Grandpa. I thought it was typical teenage behavior. I didn't realize they were poisoning him against me. Richard Morrison's office was in downtown Duluth, in one of those historic buildings overlooking Lake Superior. I met him there the morning after my fall, my wrist in a brace, my head still pounding. He took one look at me and his face went pale. Margaret, what happened to you? I fell down the stairs yesterday. But Richard, what's going on with my accounts? He spread documents across his mahogany desk. Bank statements, transaction records, wire transfer confirmations. Margaret, in the past 18 months, over $180,000 has been moved out of your investment accounts. The room started spinning. What? I never authorized anything like that. I know you didn't. That's why I've been trying to reach you. The transfers were authorized by someone claiming to have your power of attorney. They sent us documents with your signature, but Margaret, I've known you for 30 years. Something felt wrong, so I've been trying to verify directly with you. What kind of transfers? Richard pulled up a spreadsheet on his computer. It started small. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, always with plausible explanations. Home repairs, medical expenses, estate planning fees. But then the amounts got larger. 30,000 for an investment opportunity, 50,000 for a business venture, all going to accounts I couldn't verify. Whose accounts? That's what took me weeks to trace. The money was laundered through several intermediary accounts, but ultimately, everything ended up with your daughter Jessica and her husband Kyle. I stared at those numbers. $180,000, nearly half of Robert's life insurance, money he'd left to ensure I'd be comfortable for the rest of my life. There's more, Richard said quietly. Someone's been making inquiries about your remaining assets. Specifically, questions about whether you're mentally competent to manage your own finances, whether you might need a conservator. The words hit like a physical blow. They're trying to have me declared incompetent? It looks that way. Margaret, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Have you given them power of attorney? Have you signed anything they've asked you to sign without reading it carefully? I thought back over the past 18 months, the stack of papers Jessica had brought to me. It's just estate planning stuff, Mom. The lawyer said you need to sign these. The documents I'd signed while exhausted, while crying, while too grief-stricken to focus. Richard handles all this stuff anyway, Mom. This is just backup paperwork. I might have, I whispered. I signed things. They said they were just copies of documents Richard already had. They said it was for Robert's estate. Richard's expression told me everything. Margaret, I think you need to talk to an attorney. Not just any attorney. Someone who specializes in elder financial abuse. Because what you're describing is textbook fraud, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. I called my old friend Patricia Chen, an attorney who'd handled Robert's estate. She came to Richard's office immediately. After reviewing everything, her first words were, "Margaret, where are you staying tonight?" "At home, of course. Where else would I?" "No," Patricia's voice was firm. "You cannot go back to that house until we understand the full scope of what they've done. If they're building a case for incompetency, every interaction with you is being documented and twisted. Every time you forget where you put your keys, every time you repeat yourself, every time you seem confused, they're noting it as evidence. But I have to go home. My things are there. My photos of Robert." "Margaret," Richard interrupted gently, "think about how you fell down those stairs. Do you remember what happened?" I tried to recall. I'd been going downstairs to make tea. The stairs had felt slippery. "I don't know. I just lost my footing." "Was anyone else home?" "Jessica and Kyle were there. They were in the living room. I remember hearing them laughing about something." Patricia and Richard exchanged looks. "Margaret," Patricia said carefully, "I need you to consider the possibility that your fall wasn't an accident. I need you to consider that someone who stands to gain from you being incapacitated or dead might have helped you fall." The suggestion was so horrible I couldn't process it. "You think my daughter tried to kill me?" "I think your daughter and her husband are conducting a systematic financial abuse scheme that has escalated rapidly. I think they're running out of money to steal, and I think they're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things." Patricia drove me to a hotel in Duluth. A nice one, the kind Robert and I used to stay at for anniversary weekends. She paid cash so there'd be no credit card trail. As I sat in that anonymous hotel room, I did something I should have done months ago. I started looking through my own financial records online, the accounts I still had access to. What I found made my emergency room visit look like a minor inconvenience. The investment theft was just the beginning. They'd opened credit cards in my name. Not just one or two, but 8 different cards, each with limits between $10,000 and $20,000. All of them showing my address as the Lakeside House. All of them current and in good standing, with minimum payments being made from accounts I didn't recognize. I pulled up the statements. The charges told a story of people living far beyond any means they'd ever earned honestly. Jessica's new car lease, $1,800 monthly. Kyle's business equipment purchases, thousands of dollars at Best Buy, Apple Store, gaming supply shops, designer clothes from Nordstrom, dinner bills at restaurants I'd never heard of, $300 and $400 at a time, a 7-day Caribbean cruise in December, charged while they'd told me they were visiting Kyle's sick father in Milwaukee. But what made me physically ill was a charge from 5 days ago, a jewelry store purchase for $4,200, made the day after I fell down the stairs. While I was in the hospital with a fractured wrist, Kyle had been buying jewelry. I printed everything I could access. By 3 in the morning, I had a folder 2 inches thick documenting systematic fraud stretching back 18 months. But I couldn't sleep. Something about those stairs kept bothering me. I'd fallen before dawn. The house had been dark, but I'd lived in that house for 27 years. I knew every step, every creak, every corner. How had I just lost my footing? I pulled up my phone and scrolled through my photos, looking for anything recent from the house. And there it was. A photo I'd taken 3 days before my fall, showing Ethan's school project on the dining room table. In the background, barely visible, were my stairs. I zoomed in. There, on the 3rd step from the top, Something clear and shiny. Something that caught the light from the window. I zoomed in more, pixels blurring, but the shape becoming clearer. Ice. Someone had put ice on my stairs. At 8 a.m., Patricia arrived with a police detective named Sarah Rodriguez. I showed them everything. The financial documents, the credit card statements, the photo with ice on the stairs. Detective Rodriguez studied the photo carefully. Mrs. Peterson, I need to be clear about what you're alleging. You believe your daughter and son-in-law are not only committing financial fraud, but also attempted to cause you serious injury? I'm saying I lived in that house for 27 years and never once slipped on those stairs. I'm saying ice doesn't form naturally on indoor stairs in a heated house. And I'm saying I fell the morning after I told Jessica I wanted to review our financial arrangements with my advisor. The detective made notes. We'll need access to the house to look for evidence. But Mrs. Peterson, you should know that these kinds of cases are notoriously difficult to prove. Family members often claim they were just helping, that there were misunderstandings, that the victim was confused, which is exactly why they're building an incompetency case, Patricia added. So anything Margaret says can be dismissed as the confused ramblings of an old woman. I'm not confused, I said firmly. I'm 67 years old. I have all my faculties, and I know exactly what's been done to me. The question is, how do I prove it? Detective Rodriguez smiled slightly. Well, for starters, you've already done more documentation than most victims manage. Financial elder abuse usually succeeds because the victims don't realize what's happening until it's too late, or they're too ashamed to report their own family members. You're fighting back, that's good. But we need to move carefully, Patricia warned. If we tip them off too soon, they might accelerate their plans. They might try to have you committed before we can establish your competency independently. What do I do? I asked. First, Patricia said, we file for an emergency protective order, keeping them away from you. Second, we freeze all accounts they might have access to. Third, we get you examined by an independent physician to establish cognitive baseline. Fourth, we file criminal complaints for identity theft, fraud, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. And fifth, she looked at Detective Rodriguez, we see if we can prove attempted murder. The phone started ringing at 9:30. Jessica's number. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, her voice dripping with false concern. Mom, where are you? We came to check on you this morning and you're not here. You shouldn't be wandering around with a head injury. Call me back immediately. Wandering around. Like I was some confused old lady who'd gotten lost instead of a woman who'd discovered she was living with people actively trying to destroy her. The phone rang again. Kyle this time. I answered, putting it on speaker so Patricia and Detective Rodriguez could hear. Margaret. Kyle's voice was smooth, concerned. Jessica is really worried about you. You need to come home so we can take care of you properly. You had a serious fall. You might have a concussion. You shouldn't be making decisions right now. I'm fine, Kyle. I'm with my attorney and a police detective. We're discussing the $180,000 you and Jessica have stolen from me. Silence. Then. Margaret, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you did hit your head harder than we thought. This is exactly what we've been worried about. Maybe I should what, Kyle? Let you finish stealing everything Robert left me? Let you push me down more stairs? Push you down, Margaret. That's crazy talk. You fell. We saw you at the bottom of the stairs. We called the ambulance. We've been nothing but worried about you. Really? Because the photo Jessica posted while I was in the hospital suggested you were pretty happy to have the house to yourselves. Another pause. That was just we were trying to stay positive. We'd been so stressed about you. Stressed enough to buy $4,000 in jewelry the next day? I don't have to explain my purchases to you. Kyle's voice had lost its smooth concern. Now he just sounded angry. You're making serious accusations. And frankly, I think it proves what we've been saying. You're not capable of managing your own affairs anymore. Then you won't mind cooperating with the police investigation, Detective Rodriguez interjected. This is Detective Sarah Rodriguez with the Duluth Police Department. Mr. Palmer, we'll need to speak with you and your wife about the financial transactions, Mrs. Peterson has reported. The line went dead. Patricia looked satisfied. That went exactly as expected. Reasonable concern until confronted with specifics. then immediate defensiveness and attempts to paint you as incompetent. Classic abuser pattern. My phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Against Patricia's headshake, I answered, "Grandma Margaret?" Ethan's voice was small, scared. "They told me to call you. They said you're being crazy and making up lies about them. They said you're going to try to kick us out and make me homeless." My heart shattered. Using my grandson as a weapon was a new low, even for them. "Ethan, honey, where are you?" "We're at home. Mom's crying and saying you've gone insane. She said you're accusing them of stealing from you and that you pushed yourself down the stairs on purpose to frame Dad." I closed my eyes. They were rewriting the narrative already. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you remember how close we used to be before your parents moved in? How we used to go fishing every Saturday?" "Yeah, but Mom said you got too old for that. She said your mind started going." "Ethan, there's nothing wrong with my mind, but there is something very wrong with what your parents have been doing. They've been stealing money from me. A lot of money, and I think they might have hurt me on purpose." "That's not true." But his voice had doubt in it. "They wouldn't," Mom said. "You're just confused and paranoid. She said old people get like that sometimes." "Ethan, I'm 67, not 97, and I need you to think about something. When did your parents stop letting us spend time alone together?" Silence. "I don't know. A while ago." "When did they start making excuses every time I suggested we do something together?" "Mom said you were tired a lot, that we shouldn't bother you." "Did I ever seem tired to you? Or did I seem like someone who wanted to spend time with her grandson but kept being told no?" More silence. Then, very quietly, "They took your picture off the wall. The one of you and Grandpa. They said it was making you too sad, but I saw them throw it in the garage." "Ethan, listen to me. You're 15 years old. You're old enough to understand what I'm going to tell you. Your parents are in serious trouble. They've committed crimes, and they're going to face consequences. But none of this is your fault, and I need you to know that no matter what happens, I love you and I will make sure you're taken care of." "Are you going to send them to jail?" "I'm going to make sure they answer for what they've done. That's different from sending them to jail. The courts will decide that." "Grandma," his voice broke. "Mom's calling me. I have to go." "Ethan, wait. If things get bad there, if you don't feel safe, you call me or you call Detective Rodriguez. Can you do that?" "I have to go." The line went dead. Patricia touched my arm gently. "That was good. You planted seeds. When this all comes out, he'll remember this conversation." But I felt sick. They were using my grandson, manipulating him, probably scaring him. A 15-year-old boy shouldn't have to choose between his parents and his grandmother. A 15-year-old boy shouldn't have to witness his parents destroying someone he loved. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in how family destroyers operate when cornered. The protective order was granted. Jessica and Kyle had to vacate my house immediately. Detective Rodriguez served it personally and took the opportunity to collect evidence. She found cleaning solution residue on my stairs, consistent with ice having melted there. She found forged power of attorney documents in Kyle's desk. She found a folder labeled Mom's Competency, filled with notes about every time I'd supposedly seemed confused or forgetful. Dated and detailed like they'd been building a legal case. But they didn't go quietly. They hired an attorney who immediately filed for emergency guardianship, claiming I was a danger to myself and others. Their evidence included the fall down the stairs, which they claimed happened because I was wandering around at odd hours, confused. My paranoid accusations about financial theft, which they claimed were signs of dementia. Statements from neighbors that I sometimes seemed forgetful or repeated myself. A letter from a doctor I'd never heard of, stating I'd missed appointments for cognitive decline treatment. Every piece of evidence was twisted. Yes, I'd been up early the day I fell, because I couldn't sleep, grieving Robert. That was normal, not confusion. Yes, I accused them of theft, because they'd actually stolen from me. Yes, I sometimes repeated stories to neighbors, because that's what people do when they're lonely and grieving. And that doctor's letter was pure fabrication. Patricia fought back with independent medical evaluations, cognitive testing, financial forensics, and my own carefully documented evidence. The guardianship hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Richard Morrison had been doing his own investigation. He called me on a Tuesday morning with news that changed everything. "Margaret, I found something. Remember how I said the money trail was complicated? I've been working with a forensic accountant, and we've traced the full pattern. This isn't the first time they've done this." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "Kyle's aunt, Miriam Palmer. She died 3 years ago at age 79, pancreatic cancer. Kyle was her caretaker for the last 18 months of her life. After she died, her estate was supposed to go to multiple charities she'd supported for years. Instead, the bulk of it went to Kyle and Jessica. The charities tried to contest it, but by then, Kyle had documentation showing Aunt Miriam changed her mind, wanted her nephew to have everything, wrote a new will 3 months before her death. Let me guess. The new will was written while Aunt Miriam was heavily medicated for cancer pain? Exactly. The charities couldn't prove undue influence, and they didn't have the resources to fight Kyle's attorneys. He walked away with almost $200,000. "Margaret, they've done this before, and they'll do it again if we don't stop them." That evening, Patricia got a call from an unexpected source. Kyle's younger brother, Marcus Palmer, calling from Seattle. "I saw the news reports about the charges," Marcus said when Patricia connected me on a 3-way call. "I need to tell you something about Kyle and Jessica. Something I should have said years ago." "What is it, Marcus?" "After Aunt Miriam died, there were things that didn't add up. Personal items that went missing. Jewelry she'd promised to my sister. Money she'd told me was in a safe deposit box that Kyle claimed didn't exist. And there was a night, about a month before she died, when I stopped by unexpectedly. Aunt Miriam was lucid that day, having a good day, and she pulled me aside. She said Kyle and Jessica were pressuring her to change her will, that they were making her feel guilty for wanting to leave money to charity instead of family. Why didn't you say anything?" Marcus's voice was heavy with guilt. "Because a week later, Aunt Miriam had a bad turn. Suddenly she was confused, didn't remember things, seemed genuinely mentally impaired. Kyle said she'd been like that for weeks, that I'd just happened to catch her on a rare good day. The doctor confirmed she was declining rapidly. When she died, I felt guilty for doubting Kyle. I thought maybe I'd misunderstood what Aunt Miriam told me. But you don't think that anymore? Now I think they drugged her. I think they isolated her, controlled her medication, and made sure anyone who might question what they were doing didn't get too close. And Mrs. Peterson, if they did it to Aunt Miriam, they might have been planning to do it to you too." After the call, Patricia looked at me seriously. "Margaret, we need to expand this investigation. If we can prove a pattern of elder abuse, it strengthens your case immensely. It also means we might be able to get justice for Aunt Miriam. Do you think they were planning to kill me?" Patricia didn't hesitate. "I think the ice on your stairs was a test. If you died, it would have looked like an accident. If you didn't die but got seriously injured, it would support their incompetency claims. Either way, they won. Or they would have if you hadn't fought back." The guardianship hearing arrived. Jessica and Kyle showed up with their attorney, dressed conservatively, playing the role of concerned family members being victimized by a paranoid, declining woman. Jessica even cried on the stand, talking about how hard it had been to watch me deteriorate after Robert's death. Then Patricia put me on the stand. She had me walk through my entire financial history, reciting specific account numbers, transaction dates, investment strategies. She had me explain Robert's career, our 42 years of marriage, the house we'd built together. She had me discuss current events, do math problems, recite lists forward and backward. By the time she finished, it was clear to everyone in that courtroom that I was sharp as ever. Then she entered the financial evidence. The forged power of attorney, the credit cards opened in my name, the fraudulent transfers, the pattern matching Kyle's actions with his aunt. Jessica's attorney tried to claim I'd given them permission, that I'd simply forgotten. But Patricia had recordings of Kyle admitting to purchases he claimed were his own money, admission there was no way he could afford otherwise. She had bank records showing they'd been living beyond their means for years. The judge denied the guardianship petition. And then, in a move that shocked everyone, she immediately ordered a criminal investigation into Jessica and Kyle's finances and called Child Protective Services about Ethan. As we left the courthouse, Jessica screamed at me across the parking lot. "You're destroying your own family. You're taking Ethan's parents away from him. How can you be so selfish?" I stopped and turned to face her. My daughter, who I'd loved from the moment she was born, who I'd sacrificed for, supported, believed in, who'd repaid that love by trying to steal everything her father had left me. "I'm not taking anything away from Ethan," I said quietly. "You already did that when you chose to be criminals instead of parents. You taught him that family means using people, that love means manipulation, that trust is something to exploit. The best thing I can do for my grandson is show him that actions have consequences, and that real love means protecting people from predators, even when those predators share your blood." The criminal trial took 8 months. In that time, the investigation uncovered even more. Kyle's employment history was a string of firings for fraud and embezzlement. Jessica had shoplifting arrests from college that her parents had paid to seal. Together, they'd left a trail of destroyed relationships and financial damage going back to their early 20s. But it was Marcus Palmer's testimony about Aunt Miriam that devastated them. He'd kept a recording of that conversation where Aunt Miriam expressed fears about Kyle and Jessica pressuring her. Combined with medical records showing unexplained fluctuations in her cognitive state and toxicology reports, Patricia had convinced Aunt Miriam's doctor to run on stored tissue samples. The pattern was undeniable. They'd drugged Aunt Miriam to make her appear incompetent. They'd planned to do the same to me. Jessica took a plea deal. 5 years in prison for elder abuse, identity theft, and fraud, plus full restitution of $360,000 when you included Aunt Miriam's estate. Kyle went to trial and lost. 10 years in prison for the same charges, plus attempted murder for the ice on the stairs. Ethan came to live with me. He'd been living with Kyle's parents during the trial, and they'd done their best, but the damage his parents had done was deep. He barely spoke for the first month. He'd been told so many lies about me, had been used as a tool in their manipulation, had watched his parents destroy someone while claiming to be victims. We started therapy together. Slowly, he began to understand. His parents hadn't been protecting him from a crazy grandmother. They'd been protecting their scheme from someone who might see through them. The first time he called me Grandma again instead of Margaret, I cried. We sold the lakeside house. Too many bad memories, too much pain soaked into those walls. Instead, we moved to Colorado, to a small house in the mountains where we could start fresh. Ethan's in a good school now, making friends, learning that families can be honest, and relationships don't have to involve manipulation. I volunteer at the Colorado Elder Abuse Resource Center now, helping other people recognize the warning signs. It's heartbreaking how common these stories are. Adult children who see their aging parents as walking ATMs. Family members who use love and trust as weapons. Sometimes people ask if I regret how it all turned out, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The answer is complex. I regret that I let grief make me vulnerable. I regret that I signed papers without reading them carefully, that I let them redirect my mail, that I didn't question their motives sooner. I regret that Ethan had to lose his parents because they chose to be predators instead of people. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret refusing to accept their narrative that I was dramatic, paranoid, or incompetent. I don't regret protecting myself and, by extension, protecting Ethan from parents who were teaching him that using people was acceptable. What I have now is something I'd forgotten existed after Robert died. Peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind that comes from avoiding conflict at any cost, but the deep satisfaction of knowing I stood up for myself when it mattered most. Last week, Ethan and I were hiking in the mountains near our house. He stopped at a lookout point and said, "Grandma, I'm sorry I believed them when they said you were crazy." "You were a kid," I told him. "They manipulated you. That's not your fault. I should have known better. You were always there for me. And when Grandpa died, you were sad, but you weren't confused. They made me think you were something you weren't." "That's what abusers do," I said. "They rewrite reality to fit their needs. They call you dramatic when you question them, crazy when you see through them, vindictive when you stop them. But Ethan, here's what I learned. The people who call you dramatic are usually the ones creating all the drama. And standing up for yourself, protecting yourself, refusing to be used, that's not selfishness. That's survival." He nodded slowly. Then he said something that made me realize he'd be okay. When I have kids someday, I'm going to tell them about you, about how you fought back even when everyone said you should just keep the peace, about how you chose truth over fake family harmony. That's the greatest gift you could give me, I said. As I write this, Jessica has 2 years left on her sentence. Kyle has 6. Neither has tried to contact me or Ethan. Their attorney sent one letter asking for leniency, claiming they'd acted out of desperation, that they'd made mistakes but didn't deserve to lose everything. I didn't respond. Because here's the truth they never understood. They didn't lose everything because I reported them. They lost everything because they chose to be thieves, liars, and abusers. They lost everything because they looked at my grief and saw opportunity. They lost everything because they valued money more than family, manipulation more than love, and control more than connection. Thanks for listening to my story. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to Women's Voices and share this with anyone who might need to hear it. And if you've experienced elder abuse, please know this: fighting back is not being dramatic. Protecting yourself is not being selfish. And refusing to be victimized by family is not betrayal. It's survival, and it's your right. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and if you have a story to share, I'd love to hear it. Your voice matters, your truth matters, and no one gets to tell you otherwise.